Hey everyone, this is Victor from Digital Web Solutions with eCoffee with Experts. And today, not only do we have an amazing person, but also an amazing founder, CEO, and a yacht lover. Frank Cottle here with Alliance Virtual Offices with us. Frank, thank you so much. How are you doing?
Hey, just fine, Victor. Great to be here today and happy to join you and your audience.
Amazing. Frank, as I said already in the intro, yachting is one of your biggest loves, right? And we have a career based on that. Could you tell us a little bit why you left the open sea and why you started to venture yourself in the big cities and virtual offices?
Well, it's funny. I started my career very young, at 20 years old, and I started as a commercial diver, actually, doing underwater work for a couple of years. And my wife and I decided that wasn't a good long-term career.
Hmm.
I started racing yachts. I'd sailed all my life. I lived on the beach. I lived in Southern California, and so had always been part of my life was sailing and surfing and enjoying the ocean. So yachting was not something I aspired to. It's just something
Hmm.
that was part of my life as I grew up. So it became very easy. And the challenge, if you're going to do that, is making a good living at it. It's one thing to sail and it's one thing to have fun on the ocean all the time, but you also have to make a living. So I was lucky enough to be invited to join a very large, a very good firm in the brokerage business. And we actually became the largest yacht brokerage in the world in the 70s when I was doing this work. And so for many years, I had the opportunity to do what I loved, sail, race, enjoy my friends, be on the ocean and was fortunate enough to make a very good living at it at the same time. So I was blessed.
That's nice. And do you still sail sometimes? How is it today?
I do, not as often as I used to. I started racing when I was young, regionally at first, and then nationally and internationally. And for about 10 years, basically from the time I was in my early 20s till I was in my early 30s, I was very active in the sport. Was involved in the backside, the business side of a couple of the America's Cups campaigns, and so it was, very fun time for me.
I imagine so.
I had an epiphany one day, though. I was in the brokerage and I was listening to a colleague across the hall making a pitch, and he had the same name I did. His name was Frank, also.
Hmm.
Uh, and he was much older, and I'd known him almost all my life. And and I'm listening to him, and he's pitching a client. He's pitching a client, and it was sad the way he was pushing it so hard. And I, shit, I'll never be an owner as long as I'm a broker. And so I had to start it into the commercial real estate industry at that time. The next year, actually, I sold my interest in the brokerage and moved on. But it was that one thing that was so strong is that I would never be what I wanted to be as long as I stayed where I was. So I had to move.
That's incredible. I was actually going to ask you what was the initial spark that made you move, but I guess we have it right there, right?
Yeah, there you have it.
Yeah,
There you
there we have it.
I continued to sail. I started sailing small boats, dinghies, and then migrated to windsurfing. And
Okay.
I worked very aggressively in the development of the windsurfing sail design, actually. Worked with North Sails for a while, not with them, but as a racer. My wife was racing also. She's a very
Nice.
good sailor, very talented sailor. And she actually won the women's nationals speed sailing.
Oh,
So
that's
she
great. Congratulations to her.
fastest lady sailor in the U.S. one year. So we were really in the fun side of sailing. And what I loved about that was when you're sailing a big boat, you can feel the wind and you can feel the
Mm.
power and everything going through the rigging. But when you're windsurfing, especially at speed, you are the rigging. Your body is the rigging. So you feel the transfer of all the power directly through your body. And that's a wonderfully exciting sensation.
Well, the closest I've heard about somebody sharing these feelings was with if I remember correctly, there is a Brazilian girl who is a daughter of a big sailor from the past. And right now she's documenting in her Instagram. So it's nice seeing technology
Uh-huh.
helping sailors document their trips. But she's doing a self-alone trip by the Antarctic And if I recall correctly, she's gonna spend around 6 months with no signals, only
Oh,
her and the boat. And she's alive. She's sending, I don't know how, but she's sending some confirmations that she's there. But my wife is the one telling me the story. And then I also grew not as yourself in terms of sailing, but with an uncle who loved online simulation sail races.
hmm.
And I
Hmm.
remember him putting in the big screen tiny little boats moving so
Yeah.
slow. But I remember them watching those boats racing like it was everything. And now hearing this from you who had it in real life, I have only one question. Is there any favorite trip or memory, specific tiny one regarding not sales of marketing and selling, right? That you could share?
Oh gosh, I think to your comment about the young lady who's sailing down in the roaring seas down south, I think time alone sailing is very valuable. It to me was always
Mm.
a joy, and time just with my wife sailing, not racing, not doing, just the joy of being on the water by ourselves or by myself. I always found a certain peace. As a young kid, 7, 8, 10 years old, I would sail around Newport Harbor and Balboa Harbor in Southern California on my own, and it was always an adventure.
Must be
Just
amazing.
going to the other side of the bay when you're 10 years old is an adventure.
Yeah, it
And,
is.
and so I think the power that you get from the ocean, the power you can feel from natural environments has always been the most exciting thing to me. It's not a place, it's a
Mhm.
feeling and a sensation.
We can
And
say we can definitely say that you were built differently by having access to the sea beforehand, right? As you just said, 10 years old already crossing over, having your trips alone. And I can see this helping you with Alliance today. And I tell you this because, for example, I lost my mother to cancer when I was 11 years old, and I didn't go to sail the world, but I had to kind of a way try to survive by myself because my father and brother were living in another city. So there are some things that being alone teach you
yes.
on a boat, on a living room, in your bed, right? And this has teach me a lot of things for today, but of course you have so much more, and that's what I want to ask. Ever since you started Alliance Virtual Offices, you've definitely went through a lot of different things and different difficulties than sailing across the wind. What were the difficulties and the hardships at first when you started it up? Do you remember
Oh,
exactly?
no, I do very clearly. And it's funny, it's a progression from the time I spent at the brokerage. And if you don't go back this far, obviously, but if you look at the bridge between 1970, late 70s and early 80s, we were just entering the computer era. And it wasn't PCs and laptops and things like today. It was really mini computers and terminals and such.
Mhm,
So taking the working with the brokerage at the yacht brokerage to create electronic directories to get all of our word processors into or all of our typists and secretaries into word processing and computerizing everything was always a fascinating. Technology has always been
mhm,
fascinating to me. Not the creation of the technology, but the application of it. I'm not a programmer. I'm not a tech, but I've always been a person able to apply technology to solve a business problems or other problems. And I think that when I started looking at the changes that we needed to make in the brokerage. And then I looked around at property and different things going on. I thought, well, there's an application here. We didn't really start Alliance Virtual. We started actually as a property company,
okay.
building purpose-built buildings between 1980 and 1990 that hosted and housed what were then called executive suites. And we
I
put
see.
together a joint venture with Bell Labs, AT&T Bell Labs, we were their first commercial application of simultaneous voice and data. What you take for, you think of Wi-Fi and
Hmm.
bandwidth and everything today. Well, we actually were doing that in 1980. We were doing video conferencing by 82.
That's amazing.
of our facilities, and we built buildings across the southwestern United States, California, Arizona, and Texas between 1980 and 1990. And the problem that you say, what was the biggest problem? There's an old saying that the pioneers get stuck full of arrows, and the guys that build the railroads make all the money.
Yeah.
So we
Yes.
we were pioneering a lot of technology applications in those days, and no one understood it. I had full touchscreen terminals on desktops in 1980.
No idea.
No one understood how to use this. Business people said, "Oh, that's cute. What do I do with it?" So we were five,
Wow.
7, 10 years ahead of the market. And what we learned is being on the cutting edge is really being on the bloody edge. You're the one that's bleeding.
Hmm.
The market saved us in our business model because it had good real estate concepts behind it, not just the technology and the buildings we built. So we ended up doing fine. But the thing that I learned is to be on the demand edge, not on the cutting edge.
Makes sense.
And that's one of the things, the lessons that I brought from that business experience of that 10-year period. We sold that portfolio in 1990, and then between 90 and 2000, and we built another 195 facilities across the U.S., but on a lease and management basis. And I didn't like that business model. We were successful with it. We were quite successful with it. We sold the company in 2000. But the business model carried a lot of debt in the balance sheet, and that suppressed the overall valuation of the company. And you see that today's co-working world by companies such as WeWork and IWG,
Hmm.
et cetera, who are potentially very successful companies, but whose balance sheet, their leasehold debt, if you will, suppresses the value of the company. So I decided I'd bought a couple of, or invested in a couple of technology companies in the late 90s and thought I liked that model better. So we started Alliance Virtual after selling our operating company in 2000, in about 2003, after we figured out the business model and the tech. And today we're operating in 54 countries, servicing over 200,000 corporate clients, and have good growth and are the leader in that industry.
I'm genuinely happy for you thinking about you crossing the river as a kid and now how you are. This is
Well,
a great story.
crossing rivers. I mean, the moment you start thinking you've made it, you're done.
Oh yeah.
You always have to. Maybe the ocean teaches you this. The ocean doesn't care who you are,
Yeah.
doesn't care how big you are, how strong you are. It's just bigger. It's
Hmm.
stronger, and it always will be. And you learn out there in business. There's always somebody that's got more money. There's always somebody that's smarter. So you have to keep challenging yourself and your team to build what you think is right. And what's right is something that provides a genuine benefit and a productive structure for the customer. It's not right for the customer, it's not right for you. It's to be the customer, the client, the member in our case first. And if you make all your decisions around what's good for them instead of what's good for you, then ultimately you should be rewarded. And
Yeah.
we've been lucky enough to follow that philosophy 45 years now, and we've been justly rewarded as a result of it.
That's amazing. I remember what you're saying is actually quite what I believe because back in 2000, I think, eight, back in Brazil, had a class where a sales teacher out of university was telling us a story about a TV sales guy who wanted to sell a 50-inch TV, but the customer only had a desk for a 32-inch TV. And the seller didn't care about the desk size. He said that this is the best TV we have in store. You should take it. And he lost the sale because it was the best TV, sure, but it didn't even fit the house. Why would you buy something like this, right? And when we talk about, for example, this case, TVs not fitting, we are also facing I wouldn't say a crisis, but a new difficulty that was brought with remote working post COVID, which is the performance of remote teams. As you were saying, you have a lot of, you know, a lot about of companies who are remote. Your
Sure.
customers, of course, they are.
Undoubtedly. I
You
love
know,
remote.
exactly. Me too. Me too. I'm a huge remote lover. But we always hear about, especially in LinkedIn, you hear about founders or directors inviting people over to the office because of performance issues, because of cultural issues. And sometimes it is to micromanage teams, right?
Sure.
Because they can't stand thinking that an analyst right now could be having work in his back. But about what you think in critical traits for a good team to work and perform great in a remote environment, what would you suggest to any company who wants that cultural positivity even in a remote place like this?
Well, first, you're in Portugal, up by Porto, and I'm in Fort Worth, Texas, and yet we're bonding and establishing a relationship.
Yeah.
We've already talked about family and favorite
Yes.
places, and you were even mentioning that your dog. So we've already begun to establish a relationship, and we've done so in less than an hour, 4,000 miles from each other. Personal relationships, breaking bread, so to speak, and personal relationships, shared experiences are very important, but they are not necessary for everything, for everybody all the time. And our own company, our executive team is very distributed from our head of marketing is in Kentucky, our CFO and CTO are in Las Vegas, our chief operating officer and administrative officers are in Monterrey, Mexico. I'm in Fort Worth, Texas. And yet we've worked together for 20 some years on this one company, and no one's ever left. No one's ever complained about the
Great.
culture. And I think if you need to sit next to somebody to create common culture, I think you have a problem. I
Great.
think that you didn't understand the values that you shared to begin with. And so it's the values you share to begin with that brings people together more than sitting in the same room. That oftentimes breeds, well, there's an old saying, familiarity breeds contempt.
Oh, yeah.
Absence makes the love grow fonder.
Yes.
Okay, and sometimes if you want people to make decisions, leave them on their own,
Hmm.
but force them to make decisions. And so in our company, we give a little speech, everybody that's hired. I give a little speech, in fact, that says, hey, Victor, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Let me tell you the one thing I'm going to fire you for. If you
Oh,
are incapable of making your own decisions, if you can't make decisions, you slow everybody else down.
yeah.
And when you do that, you're not of value, you're a liability. So I
Yeah.
will fire you if you cannot make your own decisions. You'll screw up, you'll make bad decisions from time to time. We'll fix those. But not making decisions is much worse. And when you really think through that, when your culture is independent thinking and independent decision making, you physically don't need to be in the same office. If your culture is marching lockstep to follow the orders of somebody else, then you need to be in the office. But that's not a creative company.
Yeah. If you're not the army, you don't need, right? The office.
You know,
That's basically it.
it's it.
Awesome.
Um,
Frank, you were mentioning that you've been working with the same people for years and years already, right? Which is great. I love having the same relationship. I usually tell everyone here at the company that, come on, we already spend 8 to 10 hours a day working at the same with the same mission, right? So I want to be friends with everybody. I want to have relationships with everybody
Mhm.
that I'm working closely. I want to know their teams. I have one who is a Real Madrid supporter. I'm a Barcelona supporter. So every time either one of us loses a game, you know that in the next day you're gonna hear those laughs, even in
Yeah.
the remote place, right? Those laughs are there. But we also know that a good synergy amongst colleagues also helps customers stay, also makes you being a differentiator across the market, makes you sell, negotiate, treat customers, everything goes better, right?
Mhm.
What would you say in your case is one of the differentiators of Alliance when compared, for example, to another customer, sorry, another company? I imagine that people might have asked about WeWork, for example, in your
Mhm.
case. And could you share more about this
Well, we were
strategic parts of
we
it?
WeWork was a very good company and a very good concept, but with management that had lost control of it. The
Okay.
new management that's coming in to take over WeWork, I think, has control. I've known the CEO of that company for since the late 80s. So I think they've got good control, and I think they'll do an excellent job in rebuilding that company. We're different in that we're a pure technology company. We don't own any facilities
Yeah,
anymore. We own the customer. So if you look at WeWork or IWG Regis as a good example, by comparison to us, they are like Marriott and I'm like
oh,
Booking.com.
that's amazing. Yeah,
So I own the customer, but I don't own the facility. I'll use WeWork as an example, and I don't know the exact numbers here, but we're handling about 200,000 clients overall. I don't think they handle quite that many, but let's assume they handle the same. They've got 500 facilities, approximately 5,000 people that work for them. I have 120.
yeah, that's a big difference.
He's in the service department. So the cleanness of the technology model by comparison to the operating facility model is why we chose to be there. We'd been in that business and we thought there's a better way to service the customer. And it's always, you say, what's your differentiator? It's always about servicing the customer. And that has to do with value. It has to do with responsiveness. It has to do with speed. And in business, it's not the big that eats the small, it's the fast that eats the slow. So, speed in the way you can adapt your model to changing conditions, flexibility, which is critical, things such as the pandemic proved that to everybody. Flexibility is critical to survival.
Yeah,
Those things are major differentiators in our company, and the things that we hope have made us successful.
great.
And again, it's always focused on the customer. It's always focused on the customer. If it's not good for them, it is not good for us. So we keep that in mind in everything that we do.
And thinking as a customer right now, imagining myself opening any brand or company in the US, and I have to call you because I need a virtual office.
Mhm.
Um, if I have no idea of a location in the US because I'm a remote person, what would you suggest? Is there any rules about the location of the virtual office you have to follow,
Well,
or no?
no, not really. Let's assume you have an entity, and let's assume that your entity is Brazilian,
Yeah,
where you're from originally, and you want an office in the United States. First thing we would ask is where are your customers based? Or
yeah,
where do you want to attract customers? Do you have family? Do you have friends? If you're saying, where should I open an office? Think of the things that are going to make you the most comfortable. Where are the most direct, if you're in Sao Paulo, where are the most direct flights are going to be the most convenient for you? And I'm
exactly.
going to say, Miami, baby.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
let's
Miami, great.
up in Miami. Oh, I don't really like Miami. Let's go Coral Gables. It's a little nicer.
Hmm.
Oh, I don't like that. Well, let's go up the coast. Where do you want to spend your time? Because ultimately, you'll be at that office. It's a
Yes,
virtual office, but ultimately, and you'll be known by that location.
that's
We might
correct.
we might say, well, what's your business plan? Oh, our business plan is to expand and do this and that. And I think, well, then why don't we open offices in Miami and New York and Seattle and LA? Okay, the cost is not material in most cases. $100, let's say, a month per office. That's not going to kill you one way or the other.
Mm-mm.
So it really is based on your own business plan. There might be tax considerations. Maybe
Sure.
you have to form a U.S. entity, in which case we would have partners that form entities for you. Maybe you're going to require corporate governance to manage the corporation. We can do that for you. You need telecoms and you need a live receptionist. We have call centers. So
That's
all of
amazing.
those things that you may need, or maybe you just need one office, but you want conference room access in 10 cities. So that becomes your plan. And we service everything from Fortune 50 companies and government on down to startups that are asking that same question you're asking from overseas.
That's great to know. Different people, different strategies, I suppose, right?
It's whatever the customer needs, you figure it out.
Whatever the customer needs.
And it has to be a good enough value to where the customer never thinks, say, well, I'm going to go shop that deal. I'm going to, no. And you create value certainly on price, that's always,
Hmm.
but you really create value on service.
I
You,
agree.
if you take care of people and meet their needs and go out of the way to do something for them, to really listen, not like your example with the televisions, but to really listen to somebody,
Mhm.
then they appreciate it.
It's I have a virtual store back in Brazil where we resell iPhones because Brazil has a huge market of reselling Apple products. And we started over a year and a half ago. I remember telling my wife that it wouldn't be about being the best price, nor being, I don't know, the best Instagram feed, but being the best experience in a way where everybody will come to us after purchasing it because they know that we will give the support they need,
Yeah.
either about running a software, buying an accessory. They come to us because I already, at the first time I talk to them, I'm already giving them the liberty of asking, making sure that I try to understand, do you want the best iPhone because you want it? Or do you need the best camera with the best X and Y and Z at certain amount? So that's the difference that I see that you're talking about. Besides, of course, a lot of market has to rely on pricing due to the conditions of the market itself. Others has to rely on influencers and everything goes by. Across your time working by yourself for yourself, any key ingredients you notice that needs to be mixed for a business to stand out? You know, maybe in positioning or branding, maybe in customer service, as you said.
Well, branding is very difficult. Most people say, "Oh, I'm going to work on my brand." And I say,
Yeah.
"Dude, you have 5 people in your company, and you're only in one city. You're not a household brand. You are not IBM. You are not General Motors. You are not Nike. Don't pretend that you're going to work on your brand. Instead, work on your reputation. Work on your reputation. Have the people that you work with. It's not the customer that you get that's important. It's the customer that you keep." And I'll use our own business as an example. We have data from one of our major competitors, and we know that our customer life cycle is 2.5 times longer than their customer life cycle.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Okay, so, if we have the same cost of customer acquisition, then there's a huge difference in the structure of the
Direct.
companies. And so it's the customer you keep and the wallet share you develop from that customer, which is what you're talking about, the additional things that that customer buys from you because they trust you because of your reputation. And we have enterprise clients, very large enterprise clients that are, like I say, everything from large government to Fortune 50
Mhm.
companies. And we don't have a single salesperson. We do not have a single outbound salesperson in the company.
That's wow. We have no idea how happy I am to hear about that.
We only accept 3 new clients a year.
That's
That's it.
crazy.
Okay, and that sounds funny. What do you mean you put a block up? Yes, because we want to make sure that we service those clients way beyond their expectations, and we know what our capacity is to do so.
Hmm.
But as a result of that, we have the strongest enterprise business in the industry.
Yes.
And so it's really a matter of, again, I can't stress enough, focusing truly on how to do everything the customer can imagine that services their needs to help them grow their business, not grow your business. Don't worry about your business.
Hmm.
Help your customer grow their business
Hmm.
and understand how to do that. And that's what ultimately leads, I believe, long-term success and builds. We've been in business in this industry for 45 years now. If I am lucky enough, and I'll say I believe I'm immortal, we'll be in this business for another 45 years or another
That's
100 years.
great.
And it's always being resilient, changing with the times, of course. But if you are focused on that one element of the customer, it seems to pay off.
That's great. And actually, let's keep in that line. I was actually going to ask you what's next for you in your career. We are in an ever-changing environment, remotely special
Mhm.
technology, AI, right? Who doesn't love AI today,
Oh,
nowadays?
yeah, no, for sure. AI, I mean, we've always been a technology-driven company.
Exactly.
In fact, in 1984, I had a holographic receptionist. Okay,
No way.
everybody hated it, by the way. Everybody hated it. Freaky. Understanding technology and understanding the demand edge, how to use technology, et cetera, in the development of products and in the management of services. I see AI today for us more as a service tool to enhance the quality of services that the client doesn't necessarily see, but so that we can, again, meet their needs rather than a magic new device or a magic
Hmm.
new product that we're going to roll out. Again, I see it as back office issues for us right now. Once we understand how to manage that, we'll look more towards the front office. Again, demand edge versus cutting edge.
Yeah, I love this.
This is important to us, and you always have to be moving forward. If you're not moving forward, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards in
Yeah.
time, and that's never good. So you always have to move forward, but you have to choose the path you're going to take. And for us, it's always service first. And in our company, we have two little sayings, a bunch of silly little sayings that we say. And the whole company's designed operationally. It's called sales to service. And what that means is not what that everything in the company is designed to service our sales department.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what it is. And then the flip side of that is we say, and service or sales through service. Excuse me. So it's a matter of we make our sales by providing good service, not by being overly clever or having a good pitch. It's by genuinely providing quality services. So we service the sales department so they have every imaginable tool. The customer journey is good. The back office services are all good. And that's how you keep the customer and extend the life cycle. And again, it's not the customer you get, it's the one you keep. Google loves people with high churn. They love that because your pay per click per customer just goes straight
Yeah,
up. And so if I know you guys are around the web business and you deal in SEO and you deal in things of that nature in your core business, you understand the cost of customer acquisition relative to your life cycle, your total value of your life cycle of your customer. And if you've got a ratio that's 8 or 10 or 12 to 1 instead of 3 to 1, then you have a much more successful company.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Frank, I just noticed how out of time we are. We've been talking for 36 minutes, my friend. It's been
Yeah.
amazing.
When you're old, time flies.
I feel old already, but I know that I'm
You're
kind
not
of far
even
from.
close.
Yeah,
You're not even close.
I know. I know that. I have one last question, which is one I always separate for my guests, because not only are we here to talk about business, but we're here to meet, as I said in the beginning, you, right? And you already gave us a lot of life lessons here, a lot of valuable life lessons. Is there anything if I approached you like those TikTok reels in the street with a microphone and I asked you, what would be the single advice you would give to younger generations? And by younger, I don't mean 5 years old. I can mean 30 years old, 20, 10. Do you have something you would like to share? And I believe you do.
Well, I think, and it's probably, I don't know if this is advice. It's very hard to do, and everybody would think of it differently.
Hmm.
But you really, and maybe it has to do with the comment I made about the satisfaction with being alone on the water and just being with the ocean. You have to find out who you are
Yeah.
and really understand who you are as a person. And allow that person to develop and mature naturally overall and be comfortable with yourself. And hopefully that comes from making right decisions and doing good every day, more good than bad.
Hmm.
I mean, it's you think of why we're here on this earth, and is to be productive and to not hurt others and to help others wherever you can. So finding your own truth of who you are as a person and then be comfortable with it is hard to do, but ultimately it's very rewarding to you. And more importantly, it's rewarding to all the people around you.
That's great. Well, yeah. I don't even know how I can end the show after this right now. So I'll just gonna say, Frank, you're the best. Thank you so much. I
Uh,
loved your time here. I hope you had the same feeling. And again, everybody watching, we're going to leave Frank's website and all of his social media pages down in the description. Please go follow him. As you can see, what a brilliant guy. Frank, once again, thank you so much for being here at eCoffee with Experts. We hope to have you again in the future.
I'd
Uh, and of course, by myself, I'm wishing you an amazing holiday season and that 2025 may be even better for your sales, both the
Hey,
term
no,
sales.
why not?
Yeah,
Whether
right?
it's ocean sailing or business sailing, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. Well, it's Victor here again with you folks. Thank you so much. We see each other next time. Thank you so much, Frank. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Adios. Bye bye.